Right, so Keir Starmer's Labour government has heralded the Online Safety Act as a landmark piece of legislation. Ministers have triumphantly described it as the most comprehensive attempt to make the internet safer for children, to protect them from the dark corners of the digital world, from adult content and pro-anorexia forums to sites glorifying self-harm and violence. Ofcom's new enforcement regime that came into effect yesterday is marketed as proof that the UK is taking a moral lead where other nations have failed to. Starmer's government insists that this law represents responsible governance, a balance between technological innovation and child safety, and an answer to long-standing public concern about online harms. Yet behind this narrative lies a troubling and perhaps even more dangerous consequence. The Online Safety Act, through its intrusive age verification rules, is not just forcing platforms to rethink content distribution, it is forcing ordinary British citizens to surrender sensitive identity information or face being locked out of large parts of the internet. And as is already becoming clear, millions of Britons are refusing to comply, instead turning to virtual private networks or VPNs to bypass these checks. What sounds like a simple act of privacy preservation becomes far more sinister, though, when one asks a question almost no one in Westminster seems to be asking. Who exactly owns those VPNs, and what might they be doing with that data? And when that turns out to possibly be Israel, this story takes a whole different turn. Right, so an investigation by Mint Press News has revealed that Cape Technologies, an Israeli-linked company with a history of surveillance-related activity, now owns four of the world's largest VPN services: ExpressVPN, CyberGhost, Private Internet Access, and ZenMate. Cape's leadership is also deeply connected to Unit 8200, Israel's elite cyber intelligence unit, a group notorious for hacking metadata collection and targeting surveillance operations. By pushing Britons into the arms of VPN providers to escape state-imposed digital ID checks, Starmer's government may inadvertently have created a surveillance pipeline that funnels British citizens' data through companies with documented ties to a state currently accused of genocide in Gaza. So, has Starmer, through the Online Safety Act, not only failed to protect privacy, but actively endangered it by driving citizens to platforms that could serve foreign intelligence interests? And given his own pro-Israel leanings, did he know he was doing this? And if so, what does this reveal about his government's priorities, competence, its geopolitical foresight, and its moral judgment at a time when Israel faces global condemnation for its war crimes? Well, the Online Safety Act was passed under a Conservative government, of course, back in 2023, but it's been championed and now enforced by Starmer's Labour government, and is as ambitious as it is invasive, frankly. According to Ofcom's official guidance, which came into force yesterday, platforms offering adult content or potentially harmful material accessible to children must introduce robust age verification. This is no longer a voluntary measure or a matter of platforms self-certifying compliance. It is a legal obligation backed by fines of up to £18 million or 10% of global turnover, and even criminal penalties for senior executives who failed to implement sufficient safeguards. Ofcom's own statements reveal how intrusive the regime has become. Age checks must go well beyond tick box declarations of age now. Platforms are now expected to use ID document uploads, facial recognition scans, credit card verification, or approved third-party age verification services. The Financial Times has reported on how major tech companies are responding to this demand. Meta, Reddit, TikTok, and others are rolling out algorithmic age estimation, while adult sites are adopting systems provided by companies such as Yoti, which uses AI-backed facial age estimation and identity document verification. Twitter is worth singling out here, funnily enough, as they have begun blocking videos of Israel's atrocities in Gaza for users in the UK based on this new Online Privacy Act, pointing to the mandated age restrictions for sensitive content. But given Twitter doesn't allow users to manually verify their age, this amounts to a blanket ban on all UK viewers. Now, Ofcom insists that it will not hold user data itself, but the regulator requires that companies retain sufficient records to demonstrate compliance when audited. This, in effect, ensures that vast amounts of sensitive identity data will be collected and stored, often by third parties. Privacy groups, as reported by Wired, have already expressed alarm that this will create honeypots of sensitive data just waiting for the next breach. Another Equifax or another Ashley Madison might be nearer the mark, given the content of some of the sites we're talking about here. But many smaller websites are choosing simply to block UK users rather than risk any financial and legal consequences of non-compliance. In practice, the law places ordinary Britons in a difficult position. They must either surrender sensitive personal data, including potentially passports or driver's licenses and facial scans, to platforms they may already distrust, or find a way to access content through other means. What is most alarming is how little public debate there has been about whether this system is even proportionate. The Online Safety Act treats all internet users as potential risks, effectively criminalising all adult access to lawful content unless they agree to intrusive monitoring. The China comparisons have come thick and fast. But the law assumes that state and corporate control of identity data is inherently trustworthy, a belief history has shown repeatedly to be naive at best. For many citizens, the response, therefore, has been obvious: leave the regulated internet behind and take matters into their own hands. Therefore, the surge in VPN use since Ofcom's enforcement began is entirely predictable. VPNs allow users to mask their location, making it appear as though they are accessing the internet from a country where the Online Safety Act does not apply. By doing so, they can bypass age verification requirements altogether. For some, this is a simple, practical decision to preserve their privacy. For others, it is a quiet but deliberate act of civil disobedience. It does expose how Starmer's little scheme here can quite readily be rendered completely impotent, though. VPN adoption in similar contexts worldwide shows the pattern clearly. In Australia, when adult content age checks were introduced, VPN subscriptions skyrocketed almost overnight. In Germany, similar rules pushed many citizens to use VPNs rather than hand over ID to adult sites. This is not simply convenience, it's a refusal to comply with what many see as disproportionate state intrusion. In the UK, privacy advocates have already described VPN use as an act of digital non-cooperation. It reflects a public vote of no confidence in both government and platform assurances here. What Starmer's government seems not to have anticipated, or worse, seems to have completely ignored, is that by pushing people towards VPNs, it has effectively surrendered control over how Britain's online privacy is actually managed. In seeking to control the internet within UK jurisdiction, the law has driven users forward towards foreign-owned infrastructure instead. And some of the companies now benefiting from this shift may have interests far more concerning than the platform Starmer sought to regulate. And this brings us on to the Mint Press investigation into VPN ownership. Cape Technologies, that company with a history in adware and malware distribution under its former name of Crossrider, has rebranded itself as a privacy-first tech firm. In recent years, it has rapidly acquired four of the most popular VPN services in the world: ExpressVPN, CyberGhost, Private Internet Access, and ZenMate. Millions of privacy-conscious users now route their internet traffic through infrastructure ultimately owned by Cape. The problem is not simply corporate consolidation here, though. It is Cape's connections. Its leadership includes veterans of Unit 8200, Israel's elite cyber intelligence unit, which has a long record of hacking, metadata analysis, and surveillance operations. Unit 8200 is infamous for its involvement in large-scale interceptions of communications, and its alumni have gone on to form companies like NSO Group, which developed the Pegasus spyware that's been used against journalists, activists, and even government officials across multiple states. So the risk is obvious. Even if VPNs claim to be no-log services, metadata is often still accessible. Connection times, IP address swaps, and server routing patterns can reveal behavioral insights valuable to intelligence agencies. If a state-linked company controls the infrastructure, the opportunity for surveillance increases dramatically. And the timing of this is significant too. Israel is facing international accusations of genocide in Gaza, and pro-Palestinian activists are prime surveillance targets. The prospect that British citizens, including journalists, activists, or simply outspoken critics of Israel's actions, could now have their online behaviour indirectly exposed to Israeli-linked firms is deeply disturbing. The most charitable interpretation of Starmer's policy is that this outcome is an unintended consequence. But good intentions, inverted commas, do not negate bad outcomes here. By designing a law that pushes citizens into the arms of VPNs, Starmer has created precisely the kind of fragmented extra-jurisdictional environment where foreign actors thrive. Ofcom can regulate British companies. It's got no authority over Cape Technologies or similar foreign firms, has it? The UK government has previously shown willingness to exclude foreign-owned tech companies on national security grounds, Huawei being the most prominent example of that. Yet no similar scrutiny has been applied to the VPN market, despite its direct impact on data privacy. There's also a political dimension to this. Starmer has consistently been criticised for his pro-Israel stance, including his reluctance to condemn Israeli military actions in Gaza, not to mention welcoming military figures from Israel to this country whilst they're engaging in that genocide in Gaza. So whether through negligence or naivety or political convenience, his government has shown little interest in scrutinising Israeli-linked tech firms, even as they gain unprecedented access now to British internet traffic. Given Starmer's pro-Israel leanings, it's impossible to not countenance the thought, at least, to just have it cross your mind, that he might know this and did it anyway. Surely the thought of people using VPNs must have occurred to the government, right? They must know who's behind these. They must know about them, or am I giving them too much credit for competence they simply do not have? History offers ample warnings about how safety-driven laws become surveillance tools, though. South Korea's real-name internet law, designed to curb cyberbullying, quickly led to mass data leaks and was eventually struck down as unconstitutional. India's Aadhaar system, once billed as a welfare distribution mechanism, has expanded into a surveillance tool used to track activists and dissidents. The UK's own Investigatory Powers Act, introduced as an anti-terror measure, has been used far more broadly than originally intended. Pegasus spyware designed for counter-terrorism has been used, as aforementioned, to monitor journalists and human rights workers as well. The Online Safety Act fits perfectly into this pattern, therefore. Laws designed to protect inevitably expand in scope and create infrastructure that others, especially foreign intelligence agencies, are quick to exploit. The very same fear used to justify these laws, whether of terrorism or child exploitation, becomes the excuse for ever greater encroachment. Starmer had alternatives here. The UK could have pursued privacy-preserving age assurance systems using zero-knowledge proofs or device-based parental controls rather than mass ID collection. The government could have required all age verification to be handled by UK-regulated, publicly accountable providers, explicitly banning foreign companies with intelligence ties. Open-source auditing could have ensured that verification systems could be trusted. Educational campaigns and platform accountability, fining companies for harmful recommendation algorithms rather than policing ordinary users, could have addressed the root causes of online harms without criminalising private access. But most importantly, Starmer's government should have conducted a geopolitical risk assessment here, as it has in other sectors, just as Huawei was barred from 5G infrastructure. Cape and similar companies could have been scrutinised or even restricted from marketing themselves as privacy tools to UK citizens. Instead, Starmer's government has created conditions where British citizens now pay foreign companies, some with links to intelligence agencies, I have no doubt, for the illusion of privacy instead. The question of who owns VPNs is not an abstract or an academic question. It is deeply political, especially now. Israel's actions in Gaza, condemned by numerous human rights organisations as war crimes, and even genocide, of course, make it a uniquely unfit custodian of global privacy infrastructure. Pro-Palestinian activists, BDS organisers and journalists are high-value targets for Israeli surveillance. By pushing UK citizens towards VPNs controlled by companies with Israeli intelligence ties, Starmer's government may be indirectly enabling the very surveillance of those who oppose such atrocities. And that raises a grim moral question, that in the name of protecting children from online harm, has Starmer's government made it easier for a foreign power, accused of genocide, to monitor its critics? In a world where surveillance is a tool of political warfare, this is not just negligence, it borders on complicity. I struggle to believe this government is unaware of this. Keir Starmer promised a safer, more accountable internet, but his Online Safety Act has done the opposite. It's created a system where British citizens must choose between surrendering their identities to domestic corporations or trusting foreign companies with dubious links. In driving people to VPNs owned by Israeli-linked firms, the government has potentially exposed activists, journalists, and ordinary citizens to surveillance by a state accused of war crimes. So this is not just a failure of policy, it is a failure of moral and political judgment. Starmer claims to stand for human rights, yet his government's flagship digital policy may now be delivering British data into the hands of a state condemned on the world stage for its human rights abuses. If this is what safety looks like, you really do have to ask, who exactly is it that Starmer is really keeping safe here? The children he claims to protect, or the governments and corporations he seems very, very unwilling to challenge? If you're going to go down the VPN route here, choose wisely. It's not like Israeli subterfuge isn't well known and well documented either, not just digitally, but physically too. Mysterious blasts have been going off in Iran, so talk naturally goes to whether Israel is responsible for that, and are they attempting to restart war with the Iranians again, or Is this more their typical abuse of a ceasefire going on that they hope just goes on largely unnoticed and unattributed, or is it something else completely? Check out this video recommendation here to find out as your suggested next watch. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content, as well as spreading the word and helping to support the channel at the very same time, which is very much appreciated, holding power to account for ordinary working class people, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.